In this portion of the series, we're going to be talking about the three different dates that can be involved when you're applying for disability or SSI. The first of which is the alleged onset date. This is the date essentially that you're alleging that you became disabled. Usually there's two different categories of disabilities, traumatic and non-traumatic. So traumatic, as an example, would be something like a car accident or something unexpected. Non-traumatic would be like maybe you had some sort of illness or a virus or disease or maybe cancer or something like that that developed over time. The alleged onset date for a traumatic injury is usually the date of whatever event happened causing you to become disabled. And a non-traumatic injury, I would say if it's like an illness or like a cancer or something like that, it usually ends up being the date that you're diagnosed by a doctor with that condition. You might even want to consider. So let's say that you got admitted to a hospital or something like a week before. So if you had cancer and then maybe you weren't aware of it, and then out of nowhere you kind of got hit with all these symptoms, and maybe you passed out and you ended up in the emergency room and you got admitted to the hospital, you might want to use the date that you were admitted at that point as far as your alleged onset date. The next term that's going to be involved is the potential onset date. This is the date that Social Security is going to recommend to DDS, the Disability Determination Service, of when you meet the technical criteria, right? So Social Security, they don't make any medical determinations on a disability claim. They only consider the technical aspects of it, right? So they're going to take into account what you said as far as your alleged onset date. Typically, the potential onset date and the alleged onset date can be the same date, or they can be different. In cases where they're different, it's usually because there's work involved. So you'll see in the series that there's a portion dedicated to Social Security. If you have any work involved after the date that you're alleging that you became disabled, Social Security has to conduct a review of that work and make a determination. Now, the result of that determination is going to come up with their potential onset date. And it's either going to agree with your date or it's going to be a different date, usually a later date. So, like I said, if you had work involved, that's usually when that date is going to be different. And Social Security will have to provide a formal determination that then gets reviewed by the Disability Determination Service so that they know Social Security is, one, aware of that work, two, conducted essentially a work review on an initial claim, and three, has made a decision that you meet all of the technical criteria to proceed with a disability claim. And if you didn't, then your claim will be technically denied by Social Security, and it will not move forward. They won't even transfer it to DDS for a medical decision. And the reason being is because disability claims are a budgeted item, and that budget is determined by Congress. So in any area where they can make a technical denial, specifically, again, it's usually because of your work, they'll make that denial, and then your claim would not proceed until either your work has, in the case of work, your work is reduced or has totally stopped. The third term that comes into play here is the established onset date. So assuming that you filed with Social Security and they agreed with your date, or they had a different potential onset date, and they transfer your claim to DDS. DDS reviews all your medical paperwork, and they make a favorable determination. The date that they put on the determination as far as when you became disabled is called the established onset date. So moving forward, if you had any like medical reviews or anything like that, it would be based off of that date. If you were denied, then there's going to be no, that means that they did not find you to be disabled, and there would be no like disability date. Now, if you filed an appeal and maybe somebody took another look at it and maybe something was missed, then maybe they go back and they look at it that way. Now, this date can still be different than your alleged onset date and even the potential onset date. I would say in cases like that, it would be when either there's not enough medical records to show that you became disabled with your date, and maybe, through later medical records, or maybe even through the exam that, if they set you up with a consultative exam, maybe they go with that date. Maybe at that point is when you check all the boxes for whatever condition you're alleging that you became disabled for. So these are the three different terms or dates that can be involved when you apply for disability.